man börjar med oft bergsparkalor när is och fyr samman blir stad.
Oh, Malphite. All right, here we go. Just
still going for this way. She would as Chimera super low.
Trouble, but there's the Rakan coming in for the shooting. The shooting again.
Oh my God!
They lose.
And everyone bow down to Venom Crest. Two-time champions. Bow down to Jake.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Four Nations. This is the UKEL Twitch channel. I am Trajan. I'll be your host for the first two games today. Now, before we get into the action, I'm sure you're all sick of the sun and the sunlight. I know I am. It is too much out there. So we here at the Four Nations are going to do you all a favor. We're going to do ourselves a favor, and we're going to just dim it down a little bit. So if we just warm up the caster, start the button fingers, let's get it dark moded. That's better. Thank goodness. Okay, now let's get into the games. Right now we can all see the screen. Let's bring my analysts in. Bring the desk in, folks. Bring them in. Harold and Frisky, welcome to our opening desk. Looking well prepared. Now you can take the shades off, fellas, because I've actually solved that for you. So don't worry about it. You were well prepared, and props for being prepared, but unfortunately, I guess Frisky, you can just turn the right way around. So now they don't reverse the sunlight, I guess. Now they're the right way around. But welcome to Desk, Frisky. Works, yeah. Welcome, yeah, exactly. Welcome back. How you feeling about summer here at the Four Nations?
It's good. It's summertime. I've got the summer shirt on. I mean, it's, the UK is obviously quite warm. It's a good 16, 17 degrees. I know you guys are really sweating out there with that. It's not going to be easy, but, we're preparing for the summer as well as we can.
Absolutely. Harold, I mean, given the European, the Mediterranean adjacent position, are you suffering any more or less than us out here?
Had to put on my diving suit earlier to go out today because of the rain, but other than that, it's been pretty warm, But,
it's a mess.
Enjoying it, ready for another split of UKEL
yes.
Four Nations. Really
we can all ignore the weather and focus on the real important thing, which is video games. So let's get the standings up. Let's look at our teams, our rosters here for this split of the Four Nations. Now, we've had a couple of changes, a couple of new faces, a couple of old faces as well coming back in. Harold, could you break us down for us the major org movements coming from Split to Summer?
Well, we went through promo relegation, and former roster turned absorbed by Absolved, ended up
yes.
promoting through the promotion and relegation, and Bulldog Academy pulling off their best Steve McQueen impression and pulling off the great escape through the promotion relegation. But there's some known players, there's some returning names to this split. Absolved, of course, picking up the DMG roster, as we were saying. They've got they've got a lot of known names, especially for Division 2.
Mm-hmm.
But the big pieces would be, well-known names. You've got Emilian Muter, mid lane and AD carry.
Yep.
But then you've got youngsters, we've got some youngsters that can definitely, pack a punch. We've got Dognappy, Tea Time, and Gibble coming in for their first debut in Division 1. So, a lot of some new names, some known names, new talent in most of all.
We do love new talent. That's part of the reason why we're even here, is to bring up and elevate that new talent. Now, Frisky, from what we've seen of these new talent, and we do have a lot of old names still as well, do you think there's any of these new names, either orgs or players, that you're expecting to kind of upset the apple cart here in the Four Nations, or do you think we're still going to be having the same kind of top echelon that is going to be trying to hold the new talent back as we're trying to gatekeep from that top tier?
I mean, I certainly think that the top one or two teams are probably still going to be holding things up. I mean, obviously those top teams have got some new talent, but we'll talk about Venom Crest in a second. But I'm interested to see what Absolved can do. As an org coming back to this, too dark. But seeing what Absolved can do, the fact that they've got a bunch of players who have really stuck with that org, they've brought themselves back. I'm actually really interested to see what they can do. They did pretty well in Div 2 before. I think with a lot of the player changes happening, and with Venom Crest kind of making you wouldn't think at the start of last season it would be a surprise win, but I would just see how things went and how that finals went. Definitely a surprise win, and with Imquick completely different. I think we could still see a lot of shakeup. I think there could be, many different ways people could go. It could still be a lot of gatekeeping, though. We could see might take a while for these newcomers to get a little situated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair. We'll give them a couple of weeks, we'll give them a couple of games, and we'll see where everyone starts to shake out. Now, we do need to address something briefly that some of our other wonderful talent here at the Four Nations wrought upon the world. Harold, you may have had a hand in this. This is the tier list that was put together on our pre-show podcast on the weekend. And now I want to quickly get your takes here. Now, Harold, you are part of this, but this was a collaborative effort, so you cannot take responsibility for the full thing. And I'll come to you first. I want you to give me two things from this tier list. I want you to give me the hardest truth, the hardest pill to swallow from this list, and also the most egregious crime that has been wrought on this list. Can you give me those?
Well, the hardest truth is probably Belfast Storm being our top tier. It
Properly
is just
here. Yeah.
They've brought in some excellent firepower in the top lane and in the jungle. They've retained some of their better members from last split. They've brought in a different support in Mitch, but they've brought in Raider and Roulette in the top lane and in the jungle. This is a roster that, on paper, this is the best roster that we have in the league. Period.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really to argue on about it.
Yeah,
and
we'll just have to accept it.
Yeah, and the most egregious crime is, as I said on the show, is Inquick being on the bottom tier. I do think, as much as some of this talent is older,
there was a bit of memeing going on.
Yeah, but an old dog has got a few tricks.
Yes. I think inventing an even more Jamboer tier just for Inquick was perhaps too cruel for them. But Frisky, from that tier list, if we need to get it back up again, we can. But is there anything on there that seems particularly false to you? Anything that seems out of line, that from what you've seen of these teams, what you're expecting, does anything seem a bit unfair, unreasonable, perhaps?
Well, first of all, half the things said Jambo were in there, and I have no idea what that even means, but I don't need that explained to me. That's a joke I'm not going to understand.
It's easier not to explain it at this point.
At this point, yeah, it'll take too long. I'm with Harold. I think Inquick being a little bit low, besides, changing 4 of the 5 players is pretty surprising. I mean, I think their top laner is still a really strong individual player, and, from what some of the stuff he showed last split, I think it's potential that he could still do a lot. I actually think the one that's pretty surprising is Venom Crest being 5th on there. I know they've changed a good chunk of their roster, but they still have a really solid core. They've still got their AD carry and their jungle from last split. Their support, I think, is a new guy for them, but is a challenger player with a lot of experience. I can see not having them at the very top as per usual, but with their coaching and with their structure, I'm surprised that they're at least not fighting for second or third. That's probably where I'd want to put them on that tier list.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. And we will get to see these teams shape up, especially some of these ones we've mentioned already, Belfast, Venom Crest. We're going to see a lot of teams in action today. The only ones we're not going to see on stream are Broad and Bulldog Academy. For them, you'll have to tune back in on Thursday to see how they shape up on the stream at least. But let's get into our first matchup. Let's not delay it any further, which is Absolved versus Belfast Storm. Now, we'll start with Belfast Storm here because this is, as you said, this is the hardest pill to swallow. This is the Stoke tier roster. They have invested heavily in trying to get the most out of this split possible. And Harold, can you... I apologize if this is too difficult of a task, to be honest, but can you explain roughly what the implications for RPS are for Belfast in this split? If we could, actually, I think we are going to go to the Absolved roster first, so we'll hold that thought for a second. But let's get Absolved up instead. So pivot instead, Harold. You mentioned Emil, you mentioned Muter. Tea Time in the jungle, Dognappy top. Dakin on support as a sub in today. They will lose 1 ban for that as well. But where do you think the power is for this roster? If we're looking for a lane or a player that is going to be a kind of an Air or a BB Muffin or a Sin, a player that you can try and play for the win through, where do you think it is on this roster?
Well, as we were mentioning earlier, it's likely going to be either in the mid lane slot or in the AD carry slot. Emil and Muter are players that already have had experiences, even in higher divisions against better competition, and they're players who have stuck together in this year with DMG, just trying to get this promotion going with different players, changing pieces around. But these two have had experiences in the past. They're players with a lot, especially Muter is a player with a lot of history behind him. Role swapped as well. He used to play mid lane, if I recall correctly, and then he swapped to AD carry. But if you're looking for somewhere to play, you play around Emil. Emil has been the standout player for the former DMG roster, now Absolved, and he should be your point of focus as the player you need to unlock to bring the game forward.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see if Absolved are going to try and play this way out. We'll see what the strategy is going to be as it develops. Now, let's get the Belfast roster up here so we can take a look at their opponents. And now, Frisky, this has been set up as one of the strongest rosters, potentially the strongest roster in the region right now. Raider up in the top side, people will know from way back when, from the X7 days. Roulette in the jungle, bit of a new face. Limsy, Fuyu, and Little Pants all returning here. If we focus on the mid lane a little bit, just to continue that thread through, Limsy has always been quite a consistent performer. Now we no longer, I believe, have Air kind of setting the bar in mid lane. What is your feeling on the strength of mid lane in the Four Nations right now with Limsy and Emil and kind of their place in it? Like, where do you feel like our mid lane stands right now?
Well, mid lane is always a really interesting role because I think we always analyze mid laners, we see how much skill they have, but I think really the best mid laners are the ones that can impact, the entire rest of the game. And I think it's really going to be how Limsy kind of fits with the rest of this team. He's got a new jungler who we haven't seen too much. I mean, he doesn't have too much players that he's played before. We've obviously seen Limsy played with Belfast Storm in the split before, so I don't know why he's a silhouette there. He at least deserves some sort of picture. But maybe he put his shades on, and maybe that's why he's a little bit dark. We'll leave that be for now. But I think it'll be a lot of the same. I think just with a player that they know who's really consistent like him, I think building around someone stable like that is going to be really important to start, especially when you got new players trying to see how they fit into a team. And we've seen him being able to carry, so I think just starting there and just kind of building around that is going to be kind of how they want to. But I think he's one of the strongest, mid laners we have here. Yeah. Like I said, we got a lot of new people, so it's going to be really interesting. Venom Crest with a different mid laner. It's going to be really interesting to see what how everyone's going to fit in.
Yeah, and Harold, one of the other biggest names that we've seen come in this split is Raider in the top lane, right? That we've seen from a long time ago, has been on the grind for a long, long time, placing very, very high in ladders, both in Korea, in EU West. What is your read on Raider as a player, and how do you think he fits into top lane as well? Because we have a lot of, I'll be honest, we got a lot of carries in top lane, and Raider is just another one to slam into the mix right now.
No, I'm busy.
Yeah, well, last split we had Bust, which was the trendsetter.
I'm on call right now.
Kerberos. This split, we have Raider, who, as you were saying, has been high on ladders in Korea, in Europe. He has played in ERL once. He is a player that has accomplishments in the ecosystem. And up against, it's one of those players that you think okay, what is he doing here? What's the situation that has brought this upon us? Why is this happening? But then you look at some other teams, and the situation is similar because currently the highest ranked player in the league is the top laner for Bandits. So competition's there.
Why not? And we'll get to that later on today. We will get to the Lars of it all. But for now, let's get into the draft. Absolved versus Belfast Storm. Certainly would be an upset if Absolved can take this. Remember, everyone is a best-of-1 round-robin stage to kick us off right now as we're getting through the bans. And it looks like, to shock everybody, Raider appears to be getting slightly targeted in the ban phase. Now, as we said, Absolved have lost their first ban due to subbing in Dakin last minute. But Frisky, given that, the kind of player that Raider is, we banned the Darius, we banned the Jax. What are we looking at in terms of other kind of 1v9 top laners up there right now that are strong in the meta that we might see him go to?
It's an interesting kind of thought experiment because, well, first of all, they're banning out. So clearly he's obviously a strong individual player, but at the same time, I would say that just, banning out just for one specific player and banning out for like a top laner trying to 1v9, I feel like that's not giving a lot of kind of strength in your top laner, because I feel like, as long as you're kind of able to play neutrally in the top lane, there's only so much a person can 1v9 if you're able to play as a team. But maybe Absolved is just a little bit, scared in the beginning, maybe just a little bit unsure first time back in UKEL. But there's a lot of options. I mean, there's stuff that's really strong right now. I mean, you can go for something like Ambessa that can get in the back line really well. That's actually an interesting start, very pick heavy with the Viego and the Ahri, immediately changing into that. You can still go Renekton, that's still plenty fine. I think Gwen is not as strong as she was, but I think people still find a lot of utility in her. Yone is still, available option. We've obviously been seeing Aatrox rise a decent amount. I mean, if seeing from the Darius kind of player he is, I'm sure Aatrox is plenty in his wheelhouse. So it's going to be kind of many different ways you could go. I mean, already judging by the bans, I mean, it seems like they're at least waiting to get him some sort of counter. So I feel like Absolve we're going to wait till R or B4, B5 to get the kind of top laner they want, just to wait as long as possible.
Yeah, we'll see if they want to. If we want to see if there's going to be an R3 pick for Raider to avoid a second ban phase, if they're going to hope that it's not going to continue. It looks like it might be left until that final rotation on both sides. Now, Harold, we've not normally it's a Vi Ahri or maybe even a Xin Ahri. I feel like we don't necessarily see Viego Ahri as much. But how do you feel about this pairing? I guess that they've slammed in, almost blind. They had the Azir as a bit of information, but it's not the usual Ahri pairing that we see in the jungle.
Well, it's not the usual Ahri pairing, but it is a reset comp setup. You have the Ahri, with the Spirit Rush and Viego, of course, with the possessions and the Heartbreakers. It's a really strong pair-up because as much as you don't have that guaranteed CC with the Seasoned Assist, you still have the Spectral Mode, which can set up for a stun. It's more of a play together and less of a wait for the Vi to set you up to make the play happen. While on the side of Absolve, we've already picked a lot of Disengage and a lot of Kite Back. The Trundle, the Azir, and the Ezreal really good at delaying a fight, then stopping it and just falling back, creating space, and then looking for a re-engage when the time is right. As now, the last set of bans are coming through, more Raider bans coming through from the side of Absolve as the Olaf is taken away. While on the side of Belfast, you're trying to limit that disengage potential. Rom and Nico taken away.
Yeah. They had, it seems like they were ignoring almost anything else, but they have dropped an Alistar ban in there, of course, leaving the Rel, the Nautilus, the more classic Kai'Sa pairing still there, and the Braum has already been denied. Rel locked in for Little Pants there, so we're going to get the R5 Raider pick. Now, we know that if we're expecting and maybe hoping that they will play through someone like Emil, they've got the Azir, they can certainly rely on this as a potential, a game-turning champion later on, but I guess for Absolve, we need to see what are we doing to round this out now. We've got plenty of dive, plenty of engage, playmaking all over the shop for Belfast Storm. We've got some disengage. At this point, I guess you just keep stacking it up. Like, there's no point trying to, okay, that's... can be disengage of a sort, but it's certainly an interesting choice.
I believe that's Fiddle's support.
That has to be, unless it's going top.
I'd hope so.
I mean, the fear cancels the Rel engage. So
sure, like mid crashdown.
Yeah, mid crashdown. If you fear her, she starts going back.
Interesting.
Okay. So technically it works, and I think this is a good takeaway on the side of Absolve. You're taking away the Aatrox. It's another reset champion that you're taking away from the Viego Ahri combo. Plus, it's one of the most stable, neutralizing, but not necessarily neutralizing, but just stable top laners. Okay.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, you can't ban every 1v9er in top lane. It's just not possible. And it seems like they are still just opting for, okay, they've gone down the list, they've banned all of these ones, they've picked away this one, what's left? Fiora. Now, how are we feeling about the Fiora matchup into Aatrox? Because ultimately, this was the chosen counter pick. Obviously, you can use the riposte into the Q as a very simple interaction there, but Q's a pretty short cooldown, riposte pretty long. Frisky, do you feel like this is actually going to be enough to happily swing it for Raider, or is there an angle for Aatrox to actually hold his own up there?
It's pretty interesting matchup. Obviously, it's a very close range one. Obviously, Fiora is going to be right on top of the Aatrox, so it's going to be important for him to hit his skills. Obviously, the Qs can obviously have varying spaces of where it's going to hit. So, making sure that you get all of your hits from that is super important. And it's going to be very much, as Fiora would want, a very elegant dance where you're just kind of circling around each other. I think what Absolve are going to want is for this to just pretty much be a neutral lane, not give Raider any chance to carry, because I think Absolve's GG draft is miles better than Belfast. I think Belfast threw themselves into a corner because they drafted into a ton of engage, and then they immediately got a Trundle and an Ezreal to give some disengage. Then they seem to double down on it by getting a Kai'Sa and a Rel. So I actually love the Fiddlesticks pick. It took me a second to process it, but then realizing that this comp, it's going to be so hard for anyone on Belfast Storm to get in on anybody, and they have an insane amount of disengage, so they can't really get picks. If Absolve, start fights and kind of idiotically do that, then they're just going to lose, but they don't have to, because Belfast's only way to really get kills is they don't really have range. They can't really poke out. They have to go in. Now, they kind of supplemented that with a 1-4 from the Fiora. So I at least think that putting Raider in the side lane is good. The only problem is that you have the Trundle, which, people kind of underestimate how quickly he can take turrets in the mid game, in the late game. So it's going to be really interesting. I think the Fiddlesticks is actually probably going to be one of the key ones in how they turn the fight. They're going to have to really use it really well.
Yeah, that is interesting that the sub support, the emergency sub support, has now been given almost a kind of linchpin to this strategy. Obviously, we like the way that Absolved have draft, giving themselves plenty of disengage and decent match up top, but this Fiddlesticks is like the spanner in the works that could be an over-eccentric engage from Belfast Storm. When you haven't checked where the Fiddlesticks is, suddenly the ult comes over the wall, and it becomes an absolute nightmare for them in many ways. So, Harold, are you in agreement? Do you think that Absolved have actually kind of draft Kingdom this one, or do you think that Belfast Storm, nameplates off, do you think they've still got good angles here?
Nameplates off, I agree that the Absolved draft is better. It's simpler to just not fight than to fight.
just wait. Just don't.
Exactly.
Just don't.
It's simpler to just say they're there. Okay, we're gonna go that other way. We're not gonna go there. On the side of Belfast, though, there is a lot of ability to force the fight, and as soon as you get that first pick, then the fight becomes nigh on impossible for the side of Absolved to just delay, because the Viego researcher is going to start coming through. Yari with the Spirit Rush is just going to start running people down. The big linchpin, as we were saying, is the Fiddlesticks, because if he can create chaos in the fight, it's good for Absolved. But it's a big if.
Yeah. Okay, so very quickly, I'm going to get a game prediction for you both. And we're going to have to put the nameplates back on, sadly, for this one. So, Frisky, do you think that, given the Draft Kingdom that Absolved have put themselves together, do you think it is enough to upset our perceived favorites in this first game of the split?
When I commentated the first game of the spring split, we obviously saw an upset that we weren't necessarily expecting when Bandits lost their first game. We weren't necessarily expecting InQuick to beat them. So I think an upset for the first game is going to happen again. I think Absolved will handle the better draft and take this game.
Okay, would be a great start to them for sure. Harold, how do you feel? Do you agree? Do you feel like nameplates are enough to swing it?
I do think so. I think Belfast, when the names that you have in your top side are Raider Roulette, it's enough to swing, no pundit opinion.
It's fair enough. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable take. A split desk on this one. Let's send it over to the casters to see how it shapes up on the Rift. Take it away, Dubby and Bloxer.
And welcome in, everybody, to our first game tonight. I'm joined here by Bloxer. A long time no see. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited. I've not known what to do with myself. What are you meant to do on a Monday or a Thursday when there isn't Four Nations on? I mean, I've been sat here waiting for it to come back, and here it is. It's back. We've got such a banger matchup for this first one. I'm really excited that we get Absolved in this first matchup, because going into those promotion relegations, I'll admit I hadn't seen so much of what was going on in Div 2, but they really surprised me. They were a really fun team to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they have just been consistent. They had a good playoff run this time. I'm excited to finally get to see Emil in Div 1. This guy, I've heard there's been offers and opportunities for them, but they've stayed loyal to their squad, and now they're here, and they want to prove that this is where they belong. Emil, on a signature pick like this Azure as well, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic time watching this mid lane matchup. We've also got some other really cool matchups coming up. This top jungle has been like the big topic for us for sure, coming from Belfast Storm, and I want to see what Absolved is going to do to approach it today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. When I knew that we had Lars back in our league, I was not expecting the first Fiora to be on somebody else. But then again, of all the people to pick it up, somebody with as much confidence as Raider is going to have coming into this first matchup, it does make sense. And into the Aatrox, super interesting matchup. You heard the desk layout a little bit about the way that it works. The thing that worries me is not so much what's going to happen when it comes to just straight up this lane matchup, but once we get into those later stages of the game on the side lanes, how much do you even want to come join the rest of your team right here as Raider? Because obviously the Fiora doesn't work so well in these team fights, and the Aatrox can be an absolute nightmare in them, so how the teams deal with the macro implications of these champions I think is going to be equally as important as what happens just in the straight up 1v1.
Definitely, and when we're talking about outside of 1v1s in the team fights, the amount of resets that Belfast have in this roster, the Viego, the Ahri, both of them wanting to get kills and just continue just rolling down through these fights, just really means that both sides of this game, Belfast have opportunity. But Absolved, they also have a great set of champions right here. We're talking about the Trundle, just great person to try and counter a Rel Engage with their own ultimate to steal a bunch of resistances. And as well, Aatrox, if that does keep going, if that gets online, it can be an absolutely fantastic pick. We'll just really have to see how this top lane matchup goes and which team can get snowballing first. Bot lane, though, we saw something interesting. You know, haven't seen an Ezreal in a while, and, you know, Kai'Sa Rell does seem a bit standard, so there definitely is a lot to be watching this game.
Yeah, and the fact that we've now got a Fiddlesticks down there, you're like, wait, what? Hang on a second, that's not what we were particularly expecting either. I think it's interesting, right? Because usually you see yourself a Kai'Sa lane, kind of whatever you pair the Kai'Sa with, whether it be an Enchanter or an engaged support, you kind of want to take over that lane, right? This champion is so very strong during the early stages of the game. It can be a bit hard to play into the Ezreal just because of the mobility and the fact that this champion does poke out really decently well. But paired alongside a Fiddlesticks, all of a sudden, that's quite a lot of poke, and it's going to be a bit miserable, specifically as Little Pants right here, trying to step up close enough to actually try to find any engages down in this bottom side of the map. And then the question begins to spring up, do we see these supports stay in the bottom lane, or do they go pair up alongside their junglers and get involved elsewhere? Obviously, Ezreal very good at being left alone, but not so much for the Kai'Sa. She prefers to actually have her support alongside with her. If Little Pants isn't unlocked on this rail to go join up with Roulette and spread the love across the rest of the map, that's a pretty good way here for Absolve to be able to beat Belfast Storm. We heard it from the desk, right? Belfast Storm, they're coming into this split looking like one of the strongest teams that we've got in the league. These names are massive names. There's massive names from recently, and there's massive names from times past. So Absolve, they're going to have to look for these small advantages to be able to beat them. And yeah, the bot lane is potentially somewhere to look.
For sure. I mean, Fiddlesticks, once they get on the map, it could be just an insane opportunity because it's a point-and-click fear. The only really person on this BSG roster that can stop it is the parry with Fiora. But other than that, if they get roaming earlier, it's a great way to just set up the rest of your team for any kind of picks, any kind of initial fights. And like you said, Ezreal can be happily left alone. And we'll have to see what Dawkin will do on this Fiddlesticks as we get into this mid-game.
Let's see it, let's see it. So, first game of the split. I think there was reference to it. The first game of the split last time around was absolutely crazy. I'm pretty sure that we ended up with a Jhin quadra-kill in that game and everything. It turned around in a lot of different ways. It was good fun. I hope that this first game can really stack up to that one. So far, everything going to be pretty standard. Not going to see any 5-man engages or anything. But I will be interested to see where these junglers decide to start, because the pathing is going to be critical here. I think the early game is going to be very important to who gets the eventual win in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're seeing these junglers hovering on this top side right now. We'll have to see if they're going to stick around to start on their respective red and blue buffs or look to drop a ward there and clear down. We do see Roulette dropping that defensive ward right there, just making sure no shenanigans from Trundle, because Trundle can be played quite aggressive. This guy has a good level 1 and could be the kind of wildcard opportunity to just run at someone's jungle and start chomping. So that defensive ward will just keep some security there, and they will know where these junglers are pathing.
Give them a little bit of extra knowledge, which is going to be really important. So, whilst we wait for the junglers to begin their early pathing, we can have a look at what's going to be happening in these individual lanes. The specific lanes we're going to be particularly interested in, of course, are going to be the top and the bottom lanes. Mid lane, Azir, Ahri, that's pretty neutral. You're not really expecting anything too much to be happening. What I'm going to be interested in, though, is what the poke battle turns into down in the bottom side if you're actually able to win it out by Absolve bot lane. And then in the top lane, just what these two actually end up doing to each other, because usually solo kills are rare, but I feel like in this specific matchup they could be relatively often. You can see Raider already getting a great bit of control over the wave and just stopping his opponent from really being able to step up in a way they're feeling comfortable.
Yeah, Raider definitely comfortable in this champion, and might have some questionable interest in runes here. They've got the Ghost, they've got the Grass, not something that every Fiora player would go for, but definitely something that Raider likes. They chose this pick into this matchup for a reason, so you'd like to think everything's with intention here, as we already get a barrier burn from Muter, as they did step up a bit too far, but are able to peel back safely to their minions.
Nothing too much going to happen, but it is exactly as we expected with the early poke going on. You can see it is going to begin to draw a couple of these junglers down towards the bottom side of the map. Roulette, I think he'd like to try get involved, but there's just not really going to be the timing happening so far. Whereas it's just going to be a slightly slower clear coming on through at a tea time. He should be able to get himself down into the bottom lane at some point, but they don't really have the push coming through. And that is going to make it a little bit of a harder lane to potentially try to gank here for Absolve, just because they're expected to have the push and maintain it for the majority of this laning phase. I really like the fact that actually the early reset comes on through. You get to have a little bit of extra gold in your back pocket once that cull gets completed right here for bronze.
Yeah. And I do like how Fuyu opted in for the cleanse here. When you're looking at the CC coming out from Absolve, it really is only that Fiddlesticks Fear that is where you could use that. But if you're ever in a situation where that Fiddlestick Fear lands, you're going to want to have that cleanse with the amount of follow-up potential there is from Absolve there. So I do like that choice. Roulette is sneaking around. There is a big enough wave here if they do opt in for the dive. They're looking for it. Flash to Daken. Daken flashes away, uses the fear, and that is the first blood over to Muter. Absolved, picking up the first blood.
Oh, I mean, you said it was a big enough minion wave, and I guess technically that's true, but it's risky for other reasons. You haven't already blown any of the summoner spells out of the bottom lane right here for Absolved, so it's just flash heal away from Daken, and all of a sudden, he's chilling. He doesn't mind this one. It's just about going to be able to survive, and the fact that that first kill is also picked up by Bronze is a terrible mistake out of Belfast to start this game.
Definitely that. They are able to pick up this entire wave under tower, getting the stacks towards that call. We even see Tea Time there, proactively invading onto Roulette's side of the jungle, getting a bit of gold there. It is being pinged right now, so they will know he's there. And meanwhile, Little Pants looking for something in the mid lane, but Emil happily dashes away from that one. Now, we'll have to see where these players from BSG now move on the map. We're seeing 4 members strong towards the top side, but no objectives to catch just yet, as Dragon is the one to spawn.
Miserable down in the bottom side of the map, and we'll obviously keep tracking on through to see whether or not that has a big impact going on forwards. We can see obviously in the top side, Raider, as you would expect with this sort of counter, is just going to have control over the wave. Did a decent job so far out of Dognappy to at least keep himself relatively even in CS, isn't getting put too far behind. Still, it's going to be a little chunk at this point in the game. Other than that, things have evened out.
These guys will prioritize the grubs in return, and we'll have to see what other vision they can control as we see Daken dropping off those effigies on the red buff.
These grubs, when they're available, it's going to be really important. Like we were discussing before the game, there's a couple of champions that really like the split push available, especially something like the Fiora. So for Belfast, being able to pick themselves up that would be incredibly important. Right now, it's just going to be a bit of a miserable time for the Fiora, as much as it's a good matchup into the Aatrox. It's getting poked down quite heavily right here. Actually, might just get taken out. Hang on.
You're going in with the auto attack since the parry was used, but what they don't realize is they're being wrapped around, engaging onto Tea Time, who's getting stunned up. Will try to use the pillar, flashes over the wall to get themselves out alive. And with that, Absolved have seen the flank and can retreat back to their jungle and look for something else.
Raider living there. So unfortunate. Absolve could have had another kill right here on the Bronze. Just about going to be able to get away. And then you actually managed to turn that play around right here for Belfast and pick up the flash out of Tea Time. For a champion like the Trundle, relatively immobile, very much reliant on the flash to actually be able to either get away or just get on top of a key carry into the backline. That could end up being critical. Obviously, we've got the grub spawning relatively soon. Emil currently going for a little bit of an invade right here.
He's looking for something. Who tries to use the shuffle. Doesn't quite get that though.
That's a key thing to be missing out on. Now Emil's going to have to turn tail and run. Roulette stepping up quite aggressively. Key that he was able to pick himself up that red buff because that was his level 6. So at least he does now have that ulti available. A gank onto the top lane.
There's no flash for Daken this time to try and get away. The fear is enough to buy themselves some time, however. And with that, they're able to escape. Muter actually shifting forward, getting some extra damage in, as I'm really liking this confidence coming out from the Ezreal, using the Arcane ult right there, looking for more, and again, Daken just peeling off any kind of engage. Belfast, they look almost desperate here, trying to get something, but they're just chunking their health bars lower and lower, and will retreat back to their tower.
This is the problem with playing into so much poke right here. Bronze is just able to keep himself up and aggressive and is getting massive use out of just this champion so far. He's not even in a particularly strong spot. Can you imagine what this is going to be once you have that first item completed? Be incredibly strong. Now, the first grub is going to be picked up already by Absolved, but there are still 2 remaining, and Roulette stepping up very aggressive.
Another flash coming out from the Rel here, looking for something, but it's not enough. Limsey also there. Charm connects onto Daken, and maybe they finally stepped up too far, as that is a kill for the side of Belfast Storm, and the rest of the grubs will go over.
This is the thing, in these smaller skirmishes, you've just got a better composition right here for Belfast Storm. They're going to be more than happy to just keep stepping up like this, looking for that next engage, and really well done out of Little Pants to be able to find that key pick. It also is going to be a kill going over to Limsey, another one of these key carries. Something else that we should really keep track of is going to be what this Ahri is building. Nobody wants to see a vegan Ahri who refuses to do any damage. Will it be just the straight-up Malignants first? I don't want to help my team out. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, in this game, there are a lot of sources of threat. There's a lot of damage available to Belfast, so I'm a little bit happier for it to be a slightly more utility-based build, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. It was the 2 grubs picked up by Belfast Storm, so Raider's going to be happy.
Looking for Limsey. Flash available. No ultimate anymore. However, the damage is lacking, and Limsey nicely flashing away from there will get themselves out alive. We do see the rest of Absol now rotating down to this bot lane. They're going to look for something, but you know what? That's just numbers with these Fiddle Go Silks effigies on the map. And it's extra wards, right? That's something for Dark in here. The vision control should be a lot stronger as they go through this game, and we'll have to see if they can use that to set up for an objective.
And it will have to be, right?
Stopping their own team from
and the Rel dying multiple times, not going to be ideal. You really need a bit of tankiness right here in this composition. Otherwise, you're going to be very much lacking on this front. The Rel was supposed to be that bit, but yeah, already we're seeing Little Pants falling a little bit behind. It's also going to mean another tower plate going over to Bronze, putting him in an even stronger spot to potentially be able to carry this Absolved roster. Resets potentially coming through. Interesting timing. We've got Drake up.
Looking for Darkin again. Recalling on the ward is not a place you want to be, as they're desperately trying to run away, but will get killed by Fuyu right before this dragon spawns. And that right there will be the second dragon going over to Belfast Storm, as they are stacking up these map objectives, Bloxer. But it's not over yet for Absol, because they're dancing around the outside. We'll have to see if they want anything more. For them, they're going to have to try and get something into these objectives as it goes on.
Yeah, it was unlikely in that situation that Absol were actually going to be able to pick that objective up for themselves anyway. There are a couple resets coming through. Darkin just happens to get caught out on a ward during his. But still, the fact you give over a kill and that Drake, 2 Drakes now in Belfast Storm's pockets, that's just going to give them so much extra control over the map. Still, the gold is going to be very even at this point in the game. Nobody's been able to pick up any towers either. It's in the individual where the gold has actually been splitting out a little bit. Bronze right now is in a very strong position. You can also see up in this top side, that's a decent chunk of CS, the difference between these two.
Yeah, top side, you have to give respect, because when you're, Dognappy coming in from the Div 2 promoted team against Raider, right? I would say the pressure is there for them, and they're doing a good job of just holding their ground top lane. They're not far behind in CS at all. They haven't given over any kills, and they're on this champion that will happily duel Fiora as this game goes on. It's not some kind of safe pick, it's an aggressive one, and I like it. They've lane swapped well. They are fighting a bit in the top line, but they're not too shy. Maybe I spoke too soon, as Raider is playing aggressively, but looks like it won't convert a kill just yet.
Yeah, as Dognappy, I would not be stepping up right now. You are sat on a tunneler and some boots, and that's going to be a fully completed Trinity Force right now. Limsey also going to arrive.
Flash from Dognappy tries to get them away, but it's not enough there, as the rest of Absolved isn't there in time. And you know what? I feel like I can take some blame, because I said I did too much there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, anybody with the ability to just press tab and see the fact that the Fiora has just managed to complete the Trinity Force should have known to just step back, run away. I mean, yeah, we'll have a look back at this one. Dognappy should be running for the hills right now. He knows he's got his jungler in the area, which is, I think, why he thinks maybe he can stick around. But it doesn't even matter, right? You don't even hit that many abilities right there as Limsey, but there's absolutely nothing you can do. The Fiora at that point in the game going to be dealing more than enough to pick up that kill. And Limsey does actually end up picking up the kill. Now, does... Oh, hang on.
Oh, Darkin coming in with the Crow Storm, looking for something, but Fuyu Cleanse flashing away. But the hunt from Uter and Darkin is too much. They will get that kill and are going to look for some plates in return. We do see Limsey moving on the map, but is spotted on ward. It will be pinged away. That is a nice pick over, as Ezreal is currently 2-0.
Yeah, that's going to be another place you could potentially try to play around. And we are seeing a little bit of a gap beginning to form, right? The top side of the map working incredibly well for Belfast Storm, whereas Absolved, their bottom lane looking so good. And that's another reason we just saw why this could be a deadly combo here between the Ezreal and this Fiddlesticks. You try to walk away in a straight line, well, Bronze is just going to kill you. But you try to dodge and weave, well, Darkin, he's just going to be able to get there with that ulti and burn you down. And that's going to be a pretty good use of that first Crow Storm. We'll see if it's going to be a couple more good ones out of this bot lane.
They're sneaking people this top side. They will be spotted on that ping. Dashing in aggressively. I mean, they have the parry available, so they should be fine, but don't manage to use it there. As everything lands from the side of himself. That's a kill for Muter.
There we go, there we go. Once again, I mean, Muter's just putting himself in all of the correct positions. And this is just going to be one dead Emil, you have to think. Gets the flash away, actually. And with Tea Time in the area, he lives. Okay. Oh, I wouldn't face check that brush again, boys.
Emil doing an excellent job using the shuffle to get himself away with the flash as well to be safe. And that right there is putting a lot of gold towards Absolve there. Muter's just been everywhere.